Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the April 2021 virtual chapter meeting from AFP Orange County. Let me introduce our hosts today, Dominic Mumolo and Catherine Spear.
Good afternoon. I'm Catherine Spear. I'm your immediate past president, and I'm delighted to be sharing the session with our future president, Dominic Mumolo. Dominic.
Thank you, Catherine. And we're very happy. We're stepping in today in lieu of our president, Michelle, who is, I believe she's present, but she's also out of the area and asked us to kind of take over. So we're just going to kind of move through things here, and we've condensed our chapter announcements for the day. We're going to go ahead and start off with these announcements for Be the Cause, and I'd like to introduce two of our fellow board members, Steve Forey and Chris Aslanian. Chris and Steve, why don't you go ahead and take on over?
Hi, I'm Steve.
Hi, everybody, I'm Chris.
And Chris and I are here to talk about Be the Cause, the AFP Foundation's annual campaign, and a portion of every campaign dollar returns to our local chapter to support programs, leadership development, education, and much more.
So the theory behind Be the Cause in a nutshell, and I'm sure you've all heard, if you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, but if you teach him to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. Well, teaching our fundraisers or our potential up-and-coming fundraisers will not just have benefits for the organization they're currently working for, but it will truly have benefits their whole career from multiple nonprofits. So it's literally an opportunity that the dollars you put in now are having effects for years and years and years and could potentially create millions.
And importantly, Be the Cause allows our chapter to offer scholarship opportunities to help our members become better professionals. For example, our colleagues can apply for member scholarships or a professional development scholarship for activities related to conferences, webinars, workshops, and other forms of training.
And not only is it that we can offer scholarships to up-and-comers or people that are trying to advance where they are in their careers, but we want to inspire great new talent. We want to retain them and keep them in the fundraising business. I also want you to join your board because we are at 100% commitment to committing to donating into this cause. It's not just, every cause that we represent, all of us as fundraisers, are great causes, and I certainly don't want you to not be involved with those. But doing this will not only help our local chapter give scholarships and send people and help develop talent, but it also works on a national level through AFP. It really, really is an amazing program.
Yes, and every chapter receives 15 to 35% of their Be the Cause dollars related to the previous year's contributions. There's a special treat. Blackbaud, as a partner of the Foundation for Philanthropy, offers a $10 match for every gift, not pledge, of $20 or more that is made toward the Be the Cause effort.
That's amazing. And it really makes your $1 become $2 up to the match. So make sure, if you're watching, and even once you're done with this meeting, share this information. But you can pledge at the AFP national website. It is afpglobal.org/donate. afpglobal.org/donate. And you can help us be the cause, and you can be the cause yourself.
So please join us for the Be the Cause campaign, and we're almost at 100% of our board membership giving. So onward and upward.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris and Steve. We really appreciate you guys coming and talking to everybody. This is one of the best ways we can really give back to our membership, and it's a great benefit. It's a great way to offer those benefits. So we encourage you all to participate. Now we're going to move on. We'd like to recognize our sponsor for today's presentation, Michelle French. And Michelle is a previous board member, and I should say perhaps even perhaps a returning board member at some point. She is the event producer and the CEO of Sunday Soul Events. She's a storyteller at heart. Every event she and her team produces tells a tale, delivers a message, raises funds, and has an effect that continues long after the tables are cleared or the live stream concludes, as has been the case. 2020 was an unbelievable year, and the Sunday Soul Events team learned how to show up for their clients, reimagining what events could look like and creating experiences for guests. In 2021, Sunday Soul Events continues to evolve and will be a source of information and innovation for all of us to keep our eyes on. So we would like to welcome Michelle back. And Michelle, if you would like to talk a little bit about your organization.
Thank you, Dominic. I appreciate that introduction. And of course, I mean, a big thank you to all of you. We know 2020 has been unbelievable, and all of you continue to show up for your constituents and your mission. And we thank you for this opportunity. Proud to see what everyone's continued to do while you had to still meet virtually. So we've all been having similar experiences in that way. So as Dominic said, Sunday Soul Events really had to reimagine and reinvent and figure out what 2020 was going to look like once we had to start canceling events. So for us, and Scott is helping me with my slides today, I had a little this is actually a great little note. We're actually on site today packaging deliveries for a client for an event this weekend. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second, but it was a little unexpected to be on site. So I'm joining you remote. So thank you, Scott. So our innovation in 2020 really started with some signature questions for us. Like, how do we still just show up for clients? And how do we help all of you nonprofit organizations still show up for your constituents and share your message? So we'll talk about our year in review in just a second, and a little bit about what we see the forecast for events to be and what our future looks like as well. So at the beginning of 2020, we had some options. We could cancel everything that was on our books. We could postpone, or we could go virtual. So that's what we chose to do with the trust of many of our clients, and see what it could look like to really produce shows in a virtual way, still show up, still provide content, and still fundraise. And it was quite a wild ride. We had many loyal clients join us on that adventure. And so we did 6 events from June till the end of the year, all virtually. And what that meant for us, though, was making sure each of those events felt really special and unique. And so they included deliveries. They included making sure people got something to their doorstep, a beautiful meal, champagne, flowers, just a way to feel connected. And so through those experiences, each of them had a little something different. Many were on Zoom, some on YouTube Live, all having chat features, and all just making people feel as welcome and just that full guest experience, the best that we could do virtually. And the results of that were pretty good. There was almost $1.5 million of revenue raised in this way. And obviously that served so many programs and missions. We had over 1,000 viewers that were still part of something. So we really were able to continue to make sure that everyone realized Orange County was still here and strong and still going to serve all of our constituents. So as we got into 2021, hopeful that everything would look very different, we still needed to just explore options. So one doesn't show up there, I don't know why, but that one is go virtual, which we're still in the middle of. Number 2 there is some sort of hybrid. Are we still going to be in person, but still live stream some of our content? And number 3 is in person. I'm proud to and happy to report that on Saturday, we did our first in-person event. It was small, 50 people gathered, and it was just that first entering back into what that can look like, but it does look different. And so we're here to help guide that process and how that can look different. The forecast for us, really, first, we have to be with the why. So the why guides you in how you're going to show up, how you're going to do things, and really kind of talks about the mission and why you're even doing the kinds of events. And that will be, very specific to your audience, which goes to the next, the nuanced answer. So people are asking, are we going back in person? What's happening? How do we plan our next event? The nuances of that, I really think that's the best word right now, because that's characterized by so many shades of what your organization wants to do and what your donors are looking for. So it's the time to reimagine, reinvent. We don't have to go back to all the ways that we do things, but what do we want to keep? What do we want to maintain? So being really creative, really innovative. And that's what we realized over the last 14 months, is that we all have a lot of creativity inside of us. And maybe we've been a bit constrained about what we've always done, but it doesn't have to look like that. And there's new ways to show up. Safety protocols are going to continue to be extremely important. On Saturday, we still signed waivers, temperature checks, mask up everyone. And we also had a COVID compliance officer, which as we start to reopen and have our events, having that measure in place is really important. So our future, your future, 2021, we don't know. Everything looks a little different, but we are definitely committed to evolving and showing up and delivering great information about the future of events.
Thank you, Michelle. That was outstanding. Sorry about the noise in between, but you got your message across, and we very much appreciate your sponsorship for today. So now, I believe, Catherine, would you like to talk a little bit about our program and the people who are going to be presenting today?
All right, we're on. It is my pleasure and privilege today to introduce two wonderful speakers. If you signed up for Major Gift Theory and Practice, you will be with Chris Looney, and you will be assigned to the breakout room. Chris Looney is the Principal and Managing Director of CCS Southern California and works on a diverse portfolio of projects across nonprofit sectors. Chris has been a fixture in Southern California philanthropy for more than 20 years and has a long history with AFP as well. Chris has served as a board member for the Orange County chapter and has also been a board member of the AFP International Foundation for Philanthropy. His favorite part of fundraising is working side by side with his clients on major gift strategies. Chris will be leading the session today on Major Gift Theory and Practice, an introductory course which will provide you with a solid foundation on which to build your major gift work. So exciting if you're signed up with Chris, and you will be in the breakout room and you will be learning major gift theory and practice. Our second speaker today is the very accomplished Aashika Patel, who will teach major gift advanced theory and scenario work. We will remain with Aashika in the main room. Aashika Patel is Senior Vice President at CCS Fundraising and is based in Los Angeles. 10 years ago, Aashika completed her master's degree in fundraising at NYU and joined CCS to focus exclusively on major gift fundraising campaigns. Her major gifts experience spans the nonprofit sector and includes civil liberties, higher education, social service, the arts, and culture. In her presentation today, Aashika will explain the advanced work of major gifts, how it lies in strengthening relationship management through improved systems, analytics, and blended gift strategies. You are all in for a treat today.
Thank you all for taking the time to be with us this morning. We are here and gathered and ready to go. Our session today covers advanced major gift theory and scenario work, and I'm really looking forward to digging into today's content with you. I'll quickly just introduce myself to those of you who I've not had the fortune to meet in the past. I'm Aashika Patel, and I work as Senior Vice President at CCS Fundraising. I am part of the executive team here in Southern California, and I work across our staff and client teams at the firm to really provide major gift insights and strategy for campaigns of all sizes. I've been at CCS, as you heard earlier, for about 10 years. And in that time, I've learned that the advanced work of major gift, sure, it lies in more thoughtful and close cultivation, but I think more importantly, in the systems of data management and considering blended gifts of cash and other assets. As well as data analytics. And so as a first-time campaign or as a first-time major gift effort, you don't necessarily need or require the sort of advanced approach that we're going to cover today. There are fundamentals that can yield really incredible results for an organization that has not ventured into this space before. And Chris is sharing some of those topics in the other session today. So if you're able to get the recording, please take a listen to that as well. Some of the advanced approaches that we talk about are typically applied in bigger campaigns. So big is relative depending on the size of your organization, but I would say in Orange County, north of 50 million, as well as endowment campaigns where you don't necessarily have an urgent need for cash, but you are still approaching major gifts in the way of gift size and maybe pledged over a certain number of years or a more complicated vehicle to deliver those funds. Sometimes we see these advanced practices applied in day 2 campaigns. So in a day 2 campaign, you've done a campaign to get a building open, for example, or a new site open. And your day 2 campaign would really focus on operations to sustain in that new site, provide some of that bridge operational funding for you to scale up. or back-to-back campaigns where we see often in higher education and in healthcare, there'll be a major push or a major fundraising effort for a certain initiative, a small or a limited period of downtime, and then another campaign, another major gift effort right on the heels of that. And this is where I really find myself coming alive in this work. And so I'm looking forward to digging in. Some fast facts to give you a little bit of perspective on who CCS is and the type of work that we do. We've been around for just under 75 years, and we have a long history of building campaigns of different sizes that give us as consultants and as frontline fundraisers in some cases, the great opportunity to work across all philanthropic sectors, locally in Orange County, nationally, and also around the globe. We focus on fundraising as a means for institutions to really make a bigger impact in support of mission. And the advantage of our reach across the cities that we work in and the significant campaign goals that we manage in those different geographies is this national perspective that it really gives us to do the work that we do. In this work, we really get to observe how major gifts are taking shape and are cultivated around the country. And we get to share some of our best teaching and learning with each other and also with all of you. So I think in the work of major gifts, it's important to remember fundamentally that people are the lifeblood of fundraising, at least as it relates to major gifts. And they're also the lifeblood of really CCS. We know that our best work really is the result of varied experience from fundraisers across the field and from different sectors. Robust data and analytics and research teams really support our efforts at CCS as well. But one thing that we've observed in working in fundraising over many years is that ultimately people give to people. So in your sort of thinking about advanced major gifts principles, remember that the goal is always to get closer to people. And even in advanced work, that's really what we're uncovering and trying to explore. The work of connecting to a donor is connecting a donor more deeply to your mission. It really relies on those moments of human connection and the science of principal and principal gift and relationship management. Some of that is part of what we're going to talk about today, and others is what you'll sort of explore as you get deeper into the work of major gifts. It's our goal as a firm to really position organizations for the best possible fundraising outcomes that really align with a strategic plan or a vision for the future. And so if you're doing major gifts work well on a consistent basis and your strategic plan for your institution is growing your organization over time, it would make sense that the two tracks are in parallel with each other, kind of tracking along for that growth. We as a firm don't really limit our approach to outlining the way that we believe you'll be successful in moving forward. Our approach is to really partner with you in kind of building that consensus around big fundraising goals. And part of the reason we approach major gifts in that way, and part of why you should think about doing it the same way as well, is the shoulder to shoulder strategy and thinking that's really required to get deep into advanced major gifts theory. That's the only way it really happens. You can only go so far alone in this major gifts work. And there are plenty of examples. Some we'll talk about today in sort of the concept portion of our presentation, but that's something we should always be thinking about. So today I'll take the following road that you see outlined here to go through various topics around advanced major gifts. And we'll talk a little bit about major gifts in our current environment and a focused need to really attract new donors to your organization, get your teams focused and organized around a plan, as well as, elevating sites around mission engagement. But from there, I want to spend some time in the advanced space discussing the overlap of plan giving with major gifts, especially as it relates to blended gifts that I mentioned earlier. There's also these ideas of portfolio optimization as it relates to content management and analytics. So we'll explore a little bit of that as well. And then lastly, in part of a beginning of a discussion that I'd like to have for all of us to kind of join in, I'd like to kind of remind us all of the story of Phil Knight and his $400 million gift to Stanford and what we know about how that gift came together, because it is one of the rare donor experiences that we kind of had insight to publicly. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. For those of you who are aware, please do lend your insight. And for those of you who've not heard of the $400 million gift to Stanford, we will be digging in. So on the next slide here, talking a little bit about a starting point for doing that advanced work. No matter how sophisticated or advanced your major gift approach might be, or it might become, there is always a need to attract new donors to your work. And I can't possibly overstate this need to meet regularly with top volunteers and donors to socialize the idea of prospecting and prospect development. It's often that we work with clients around Orange County, even the Los Angeles area, across Southern California, where they say, we've sat with our volunteers and we have circulated the list too many times, they don't want to see the list anymore. If that's not a experience that board members and volunteers are not leaning into, it's worth thinking about what we are doing to put that activity or that exercise in front of them in a way that leads to more tangible outcomes, that leads to action-oriented next steps, and how we rethink or re-educate that activity of prospecting. Meeting people through those that are already connected to you is core and fundamental to the idea of major gifts philanthropy and growing it sustainably. So getting in that habit becomes essential. And in those prospecting meetings, you'll be asking your volunteers or several staff members, if they're on the advancement team, a series of questions, right? Who are those people that are closest to your mission and closest to you relationally? And what needs to happen for you to pull them closer into your work? Who is connected to those people? And also within your network, who can reach them? Then you would circulate this list of names to your board after you've had a chance to meet with them, and show them a shorter list of people where you're actually going to take a reasonable or an actionable next step. Engaging board members in developing strategies and supporting them by creating those strategies and really moving those next steps along. Memorializes an action plan that people can really become a part of. And one of the fundamentals that we know is that when people feel good about the results that they've helped produce, it makes them want to participate even more. And these last two ideas, I think that I mentioned, are really essential, right? This idea, sorry, they're listed on the slide as well. The idea of leveraging challenge grants to build momentum and a sense of community. People think about this as a fundamental major gifts approach, but even if it's fundamental, it's not used nearly enough as it should be. Challenge grants are often put together from a fundraising perspective for optics, right? They present the optics of enthusiasm and encouragement and an opportunity for people to join together to really see a tangible difference. Where are you strategically using challenge grants in your annual plans or in your major gift fundraising plans, like a campaign, at the right moments in the timeline to galvanize that encouragement and activity? I think part of elevating your major gifts game to that advanced level is not just rolling out a challenge grant, for example, but thinking about where it can strategically have additional or ancillary benefit to the work that you're doing. Additionally, this idea of accelerating and systemizing what's become organic. So oftentimes when we walk into an organization that's looking to do a campaign and we do something called a feasibility study or a pre-campaign planning study, we are looking for those things within an institution that are going well for you, either because you've put a ton of time into getting those things going. Let's say there's a gala that's incredibly successful, or there's a cohort or a constituency of volunteers that give in a certain way because of the way that the organization took shape or some historical element. There's a way to establish a baseline understanding of what's working well there, and then figure out a means to grow that success or expand that success. And so don't overlook this idea of trying to do what you do well in just a better way. On the next slide here, we'll talk a little bit about getting organized with your top 25 prospective donor list. When thinking about the advanced work of major gifts, if you don't already know off the top of your head who your top 25 either donors or prospective donors to your organization are, there's some work to really do in understanding who's in your universe and what's in your system. If you've already done the work to know who your top 25 are, as I hope and would expect, before kind of venturing into this advanced space, what you'll want to do from there is really put pen to paper to socialize that list among your organization with the right people, of course. So if you're the leader of your advancement team, do the rest of the members of your team know that these 25 people are our top 25 donors or prospects? because part of cultivating that relationship, part of stewarding that relationship happens in a lot of subtle ways, and a lot of the ways that a team interfaces with that particular donor, or how easy it is or how cumbersome it is to interact with the organization or get something done. And so that top 25, or in some cases that top 50, should be kind of a household name at the office, and people should know what it is that we're doing both in the short term and the long term to move that person closer to the engagement that both we desire and that will be meaningful to them. Remember to collaborate also with programs teams and with finance. Donors always want to know that their gift is being used for the best and highest purpose. And the more that we collaborate around major gift strategy, the more intelligently, not just us, but the rest of the members of our organization can talk about the strategic value of that donor's contribution within our institution as a whole. You know, we really owe it to donors to create community, especially when we're thinking about advanced major gift techniques. Because if done well, and if you think about the nonprofit in your mind that's comparable to the organization that you work with, or is aspirational, I should say, one of the things that they're probably doing well is creating a seamless pipeline between lifelong major donors all the way to planned gifts. And we'll talk a little bit about planned gifts momentarily, but you know, the planned gift is really the largest gift that you can get from a donor, in their lifetime and beyond. And so in fundraising, at least as we think about it in theory, and in my master's work, we would always talk about looking at a relationship comprehensively, all the way through to the planned gift. So when you're mapping a chart, it may be that someone becomes a monthly donor to your social services organization at $25 a month. And they sustain that for a year. And without being asked, they increase that to $50. Just by noticing those patterns or by observing what's going on there, it informs how you as a major gifts officer or a major gift strategist is going to then pivot in how you steward that relationship or make adjustments in how you steward that relationship to better ensure that the likelihood that they will make a planned gift. So really thinking about that long continuum is essential in this work. And it starts with really having a good handle on who those folks in your community are, and creating a sort of high esteemed image in their eyes of not just the work you do, because everyone's mission is important and everyone's mission is making a difference, but more importantly, how you are approaching that work efficiently and sustainably, right? Words of the hour and words we hear really often. Building this credibility will allow you to creatively explore donor engagement more consistently and with steadier communication. You'll want to regularly visit and discuss impact, the sort of stewardship after you've landed gifts with major donors, because thinking about that end in mind, as I mentioned before, will help you figure out what comes next. And so we talk a lot in the work of mounting a campaign or mounting a major gift effort about donors that may have fallen away. And I'm sure many of you can think about those people within your own databases. They made one gift of 25,000 or a couple gifts of 50, and then they kind of disappeared. And now we need to put in the work to regain that relationship. Sometimes we can avoid that lull if we're thinking about what comes after the gift lands, well before we've made the ask. So really, when you think about advanced major gift strategy, take the long view on a lot of these relationships. On the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about elevating sites. In advanced major gift work, while you're doing the work of building your list, work with your board to really elevate sites around these questions you see here. The philanthropic culture of your organization should really inform each of these questions. And these questions really prompt you to think about the uniqueness of your mission's value proposition. I want to hang on here for a second, because as we think about advanced major gift theory and practice, it's important to note that the sector is becoming more competitive than ever before. Nonprofits are, of course, springing up very, very quickly, but also, I think, promisingly and in a really great vein, there's new ways of demonstrating sustainability in the nonprofit world. We're starting to see some startup type nonprofits that are gaining incredible success and kind of entering into the major gifts world a lot faster than you typically see a major gifts department take root. So think about it this way. I mean, traditionally, what we would see is an organization has an annual fund program that's running pretty sustainably and predictably. And then there's a few donors selected out of that annual fund pool who are bumped up to major gift stewardship. We are seeing the opposite of that. I think some organizations that have a really great idea, especially here in Los Angeles, will have a board of directors that's really willing to put up the dollars to do a feasibility study, for example, and figure out how to build an organization that is largely dependent on major gifts. And the idea being that if you shoot for the moon, you land among the stars. And so any development officer that's managing a portfolio would have a portfolio of potential major gifts donors. And those major gift donors are essentially funding or creating a very high level annual fund sustainable group of supporters. Different idea entirely, but it's going really far with organizations that are able to articulate the uniqueness of their mission's value proposition, how there's no other nonprofit that can do what they're doing. Also, how is your work uniquely positioned to succeed in your efforts towards mission? So for example, you can be a hospital that focuses on children, so a children's hospital. But how is your children's hospital uniquely positioned to address the needs of people in your community? And the long-term health outcomes of children is an important case narrative to explore. Donors, I think, are becoming much more entrepreneurial in their mindset, especially as they see news of extraordinary gifts like the Phil Knight gift that has a way of changing future outcomes on a broad scale. So thinking about some of that language before you even meet those types of prospects or donors will ensure that you have the materials to court them appropriately when they show interest. Some of these questions might have deeply rooted long time answers, and others of these questions might need some consideration among you and your team, things you may have not thought about before. But be willing to really confront what isn't working for your current effort to court those $1 million gifts. Be willing to really try something new. What we've found at CCS over the many years of doing this work is that whenever there is a will, there is a way. If a leader is excited and enthusiastic and thoughtful about articulating how we're going to approach a goal and accomplish it, there will be someone out there who will take a chance on that work, and chances are they're not very far. Transformational giving can be made possible anywhere, really with the right foundational work to get you started. So with these basics in mind, let's turn to this idea of gift planning. Gift planning is really the future of fundraising, and you've heard it here first if you haven't heard it before, but the future really is now. So Andrew, on the next slide, we'll see that gift planning culture is these three ideas here, but is defined by really two key components. This idea of donor centrism, that what you do for your donors is the focus, not just what you need from them. And also this idea of focusing on securing non-cash assets. So planned giving refers to strategies that are used to solicit both cash and non-cash assets and has broadened to encompass more than just deferred gifts. Those gifts that come to your organization once a donor passes is essentially a deferred gift. There are really many non-cash assets that can be liquidated and realized for cash in the short term, which is partly what makes gift planning culture so potent and so timely, I think, at the moment for people to be talking about and building. At CCS, for those of you who've worked with us in the past or have heard of our work, we typically in the past have done studies and campaigns and development-focused initiatives. At the moment, we are building, just here in Southern California alone, 4 planned giving programs within pretty large institutions, just in anticipation that the future of planned giving is right now. When we think about gift planning culture and planned giving strategies and programs, we think about kind of the different ways or the 3 key reasons that planned gifts are really having a moment right now. And the first is that philanthropy really continues to evolve and become more sophisticated as donors do as well. It's no secret, that we kind of have amassed the most amount of wealth on this planet than we've ever had in the history of mankind. And so people are learning what to do with that wealth and how, what is culturally appropriate around sort of the giving of that wealth and the keeping of that wealth. So just a quick history clawback. When we think about philanthropy as it has manifested in the United States, it's important to remember that it doesn't look like this anywhere else in the world. And the notion of American philanthropy is truly an American idea. It's in the fabric of other values that you sort of grow up with in this country and among sort of this broader American culture, this idea of giving back. The first schools in this country and the first firehouses were all built as a result of philanthropy. And then when you dig a little bit deeper, there's sort of a difference of the East Coast and that part of the country being a little bit older than the part of the country that we're in. So there's a difference in how donors give if they're from the East Coast or sort of grew up and made homes in the East Coast versus how donors give here on the West Coast. And some of it, I think, can be explained as a more startup entrepreneurial mindset here on the West Coast. I would also go as far as saying I began my career at the ACLU in New York City. And one of the things that was easy for the ACLU to do, they ran a $400 million Leading Freedom Forward legacy campaign. So it was a campaign of all legacy commitments. Every gift was counted, both irrevocable gifts and revocable gifts. And part of what was learned from that exercise while I was working there is that it was easier to convince the sort of East Coast crowd about the case for support around a planned gift. And there was more education that was needed on the Western half of the country. And part of that linked back to just how long philanthropic roots had been tethered in those areas. As you know, or you may not know, the ACLU has boots on the ground in all 50 states. And so a really interesting organization to give us a sense of how donors behave, and donors behave especially around major gifts around the country. That was 10 years ago that they were focused on building a major and planned giving program. So it was a combined program of major and planned gifts where both pipelines of donors were looked at side by side to understand where there may be a tremendous opportunity to cultivate a major donor towards a blended gift. Blended gifts and planned giving includes the evolution of broadening terms, thinking about planned gifts as both immediate cash and some sort of non-cash asset or some kind of deferred cash asset later in the relationship. This also ensures that there is a relationship, right? If there's an idea in place for long-term support, some sort of extraordinary commitment, then you have a longer timeline to build that relationship and sustain that relationship over, which is the best place to be. When we think about the transfer of wealth that's listed here and how wealth is held in the United States, the majority of wealth in the US is non-cash assets. Baby boomers' intergenerational transfer of wealth is predicted to exceed about $61 trillion by 2061. And the peak of the wealth transfer will begin in 2030, so just 9 years into the future. 10% of total wealth in the US will be changing hands every 5 years after that. And so your organization really has these 9 years to be prepared to make the most of this wealth transfer. And then there's the pandemic, right? This experience that we've all been through over the past year. And we've seen an increase in donors during this time committing to bequests and other deferred gifts as a result of the pandemic, unquestionably. Donors, especially older donors, have been forced to really consider their mortality. I think all of us have. And the result has been this renewed focus on estate planning. Given all of these sort of different ideas, the implication for your organizations is considerable, because those organizations that secure gifts of non-cash assets see growth as high as 66% over a 5-year period. And that's a really, really fascinating and important statistic that I personally, in looking deeper at the data, which I don't have time to share with you all today, link to the notion that when you are in the practice as a leadership team of thinking about relationships from the time of introduction and identification all the way through to that planned gift and a scenario or a gift opportunity that's going to be truly meaningful and motivating to a donor, the habit of thinking in that way about relationships has an ancillary impact across, revenue generation, philanthropic revenue generation across the board. It's just a different mindset as it relates to major gifts. It's a longer mindset, and it's essential to really break into the space that we see universities and hospitals really thrive in thinking about these $100 million plus commitments from a single entity. Gift planning culture really democratizes philanthropy, an important notion to think about as we want to get deeper into Major Gifts work. This idea of democratizing the philanthropic space and creating more room for people to participate and know that they can make a difference if they have the capacity and the willingness to sustain their gift. Offering a pathway for your development staff to engage younger donors and BIPOC donors, it is really an opportunity to do that. That pathway is thinking about these blended gifts. That's a way to kind of open your doors a little bit wider and invite more people in. Donors that make legacy commitments, and specifically that is a gift that will be realized upon their death, they often increase their annual giving as a result of a deeper relationship with your institution. The data shows us that as well. So major giving really should not be built further and further away from that longer term gift, but closer together. So what does this mean for you as you're really thinking about taking major gift strategies to the next level by blending gifts or blending strategies and thinking about bigger opportunities? Work closely with your chief leadership and your development team to determine the current state of your organization's gift planning culture and discuss what additional investments may need to be made over the short and the longer term to really strengthen your blended gifts approach. It's important also that you enlist your board's help in strengthening that gift planning culture. Oftentimes, like one of the strongest cases that you can make around planned giving is to your board, those people who are giving their time and an ability, in campaign work, whenever we're thinking about the timeline of fundraising, we really prefer to go to the broader group of major donors after the board has put their commitments in. So after we've secured 100% board giving. And the reason being is it strengthens the overall case for support in front of major donors, which is that our leadership has truly put their own skin in the game to ensure that this will be successful. The same is really true around planned giving and blended gifts. If you can point to people within your institution who have done that, namely board members who've really kind of ventured out into this space of bigger thinking with you, it will create that energy and momentum and excitement to bring others in, to put this opportunity in front of them and talk to them about it. You'll want to encourage and support your development staff to really take advantage of the very many free resources for ongoing education around planned giving, to really deepen their own knowledge about those types of strategies and vehicles and gift types. We often meet with leadership, senior executive leadership for development teams, and they say to us that they want to work on training for the staff or education for the staff. A lot of times, one sort of form of education that is a catch-all for everybody, that is a good curriculum for someone who does data management all the way to someone who's like frontline with donors, is an education and understanding of planned giving. And the reason why is if you go through any planned giving curriculum, any sort of online course, they will talk to you about the fundamentals of planned giving and the different indicators of what shows you, if someone's going to be a potential planned giving donor. And in that education, you learn the fundamentals of relationship building. You sort of see all the different stops along the way that we need to make with a donor. And it can be the best training for your advancement team to understand the best and highest purpose of what we are all doing here, which is that someone will not only invest in this work over a short period of time, but truly make a gift that is going to give in perpetuity to support the necessity of your mission in perpetuity. On the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about moving away from blended gifts to this idea of systems. So I talked to you a little bit about when you've got your top 25 in your back pocket, you sort of know who those 25 or 50 people are. What's that next step to getting more advanced? Well, the answer there, in addition to blended gifts, is systems. Systems really help nonprofits set resilient strategies for using information. Fundraising, as I mentioned earlier, is both an art and a science, and the art is relationship building. Relationship building can be taught. It's even better when it comes naturally and organically to a person and is coupled with skills that can be taught. But relationship building is a very specific thing. It has to be done well. It has to be done authentically. It has to be done consistently. And so there's great effort that people put into relationship building just to get a major gifts program off the ground. Establishing the look and feel of your topmost cultivation and engagement approach is also part of that relationship building. So if you have a donor that's your top donor to your institution, They should have a great experience with you as the leader of your development team, but they should also have a really great experience if they just decided to pick up the phone and call the institution. So relationship building is not just about the relationships you create at the highest level, but a relationship that you create between the institution as a whole and your donor. Shifting a little bit to the science of fundraising, we're now talking about data, and more specifically, data systems and data analytics. Systems is more than just your CRM. It's not just about what management software you're using to record your relationships. When I say systems, I'm talking about the way of understanding your data in practice. The first step in approaching advanced major gift techniques is assessing how your organization gathers fundraising data. How is it managed? And then ultimately how you are using it to lead fundraising strategy at your organization. Engaging in the work of deeper systems is something that will help you build data storytelling skills to improve your team's collaboration and your team's efficiency. It's one thing to go into a meeting and say to your team, we're $500,000 away from our fundraising goal. And it's another thing to walk in and say, we're $500,000 away from our fundraising goal, and here's what this year looks like compared to last year, not just with numbers, but also with names. Here's where donors have increased their giving, and here's where donors have decreased their giving. This is what we're talking about when we say using data to build your storytelling skills. How are you giving your team insights into what is happening in your shop so they can help you do that major gifts cultivation, that major gifts outreach more thoughtfully and more deeply. Systems also helps you break down communication silos across development and other departments. Sometimes collaborating with other departments is what's needed to do major gifts work in a more advanced way. Investing in systems and a better understanding of your systems will help you break down some of those silos. Advising donor database migration processes and coordinating these sort of complex multi-site fundraising activities becomes so much more easy when you have invested the time in, again, not just your CRM and what platform you're using and what different functions are available in a donor's portfolio, but more importantly, how are you using those systems to inform the work that you do either intuitively as a leader, because each leader is unique, or with your team? Are you trying to organize your team around a certain cadence or around a certain approach to an annual fundraising goal? How are you using systems to really drive those processes? Your gift planning, your gift processing and your pledge processing activities and functions, they're improved when you focus on your systems. And I know that I don't need to tell this group, but if you are in a good rhythm of processing gifts and getting those acknowledgements out, processing those pledges and getting invoices out on time and in a predictable way, all of the subtlety that comes with that back and forth communicates a higher level of relationship mindfulness. And so here's an example where systems links directly back to that art of relationship management. KPIs and metrics are deeply linked to systems. So oftentimes when we're thinking about campaigns and doing them with different organizations that are very successful, we'll then have development leadership say to us, the CCS team, well, can you build me the same metrics for my annual fund program? Or can you build me the same KPIs for an annual fund program? With a campaign, it's a little bit easier because you're working with a smaller set of major donors. But when you're thinking about trying to do this on a bigger scale, for the annual fund or otherwise, you sort of need much more quality to your data. So as each of you think about advanced major gifts work and your system or utilizing your CRM better, think about how the information in your database can help inform your KPIs and metrics related to gift officer performance in the major gift space exclusively. What are officers putting in to give us the meaningful information out and inform our strategic next steps of what we're going to do in the department? On this next slide, you've seen this graphic before. It's this idea of capacity and affinity. And I won't take too much time here, but I just want it to form the basis of the next couple of slides that we'll look at. For those of you who are not familiar with this slide, very briefly, the idea is that in any given prospect universe, which is all of the red territory, that's your entire prospect database, you are looking to isolate those individuals who are highest capacity and greatest affinity. Those are your best prospects, your A folks. Reason being that capacity is a fixed marker. You can't change how much someone is worth, but affinity is a constantly moving target. And so you can constantly grow someone's affinity for your work. And in a perfect world, everyone in your database would have tremendous capacity, and the only work that would need to be done is working on their affinity, that cultivation, that stewardship. And we would just be focusing on moving everybody towards, the A quadrant. That is not the reality of the world or our institutions. And so we pretty much find that there's people in all parts of this, this grid in our database. But what we want to continue doing is getting a better understanding of who those A folks are, or moving people from the B category into the A category. So on the next slide here, you'll have a better example of how we think about something like this, one level deeper. So not in just theory, but in practice. And so what you're looking at is a database for an unnamed client that we've worked with. And essentially what we've done is go through and not just look at sort of the wealth in their database, but do a little bit of analytics to inform what that quadrant A would look like and who those people are. Wealth screening and database analytics are vital towards understanding your potential, as well as segmenting and developing the appropriate strategies around timing and approach for each of your different constituencies. First, you begin with an analysis of recently completed wealth screening. So that's the basis, right? First, we want to screen the entire database and really take those folks out that don't have capacity because they wouldn't be included in major gifts work. And from there, if you have the resources as an institution, even if you are connected to a data scientist on your team, think about the various predictive models that may be able to be put together around that top list of the wealth screen to inform your pipeline for major gifts. In the major gifts world, as you all know, someone is on your pipeline until they say no, or until you're just not able to reach them like 5 or 6 times. Once that person is removed from your list, part of the advanced work is being in the habit of replacing that individual with someone else. To ensure that you have a pipeline to replace your active portfolio with donors that are going to respond and going to engage, this type of work becomes essential. Predictive models help to grow your prospect portfolios with thoughtfulness. The predictive models that we typically build that analyze donor behaviors and giving histories and demographic data to both evaluate and really forecast who those best prospects are things like a donor elevation model that forecasts the likelihood that a donor will upgrade from their current annual fund giving level to a higher level. So an elevation model, an elevation predictive model, can focus the efforts of your frontline major gift fundraising staff exactly on those people whose giving habits demonstrate that they are likely to respond. We also work with something called a reacquisition model. So it forecasts the likelihood for someone who's a non-donor or a lapsed donor to sort of become a donor once again or for the first time. Planned giving models are also very popular. It forecasts the likelihood that someone will become a new planned gift donor to your organization. As I mentioned earlier, this is incredibly popular right now. And I think there was a slide that we may have passed earlier that referenced the land gift of $4 million to HSU. And forgive me if it's not up yet, we'll just skip it if it comes later on the line. But I want to bring it up right now because it's such a fascinating story. CCS is working with Humboldt State University at the moment, and we implemented some of this work for a planned gift model. We met the university really 18 months ago, had not done a campaign in several years, no formal major gifts program. And so of course, we got to work right away, kind of building a campaign and building that major gifts work. Well, a donor was revealed in one of our models that was not a major donor, that in fact on paper showed no capacity. But because of the way that this donor had engaged with the annual fund at a very low dollar amount, but over several years, we finally picked up the phone to call this individual. And what we found was we had always been in touch with this person who was a Humboldt State alum for many, many years. This gentleman is much older, so he graduated many, many years ago. And while there hadn't been a concerted major gift effort, there was always someone who had been in touch, or there had always been some educational department that was keeping connected, even if it was lightly. Fast forward many months, we have now secured a gift of land from this donor of $4 million. Turns out that this donor lives off the grid, no Wi-Fi, and travels outside of town to access the Wi-Fi. Humboldt County, as many of you know, is very, very beautiful, lots of forests. And this donor, after graduating from HSU with a degree in forestry, took to the land, bought a forest, and lived there with his partner until his partner passed away. And that gift of land really came about as first a major gift visit. We were trying to go and kind of talk about a gift of cash, something that could be counted towards the campaign now. But just in talking to the donor about where he is in his life and where he wants his legacy to be made, found out that this gift, this non-cash gift of land, could be made possible. Fast forward even further from there, there's now a new educational curriculum being built around the use of that land in forestry and in one of the departments at HSU. And so it shows you this sort of compound impact, right, of just starting by looking at the data all the way through to closing this gift that was never on our radar, and even leading to a change in curriculum and additional offering for students as a result of that gift. I mean, a pretty incredible story. Segmentation and prioritization is what analytics will help you do. As major gifts officers or fundraisers or strategists, we only have a certain number of hours in the day, like the rest of our teams. And so we have to know where to use our time most effectively. Andrew, if we can go through just the next couple of slides, I want to make sure we have enough time for discussion here. I wanted to just show you an example of what this portfolio optimization, again, when you've started all the way from the top of knowing your top 25 and then making that deeper investment to really think about your systems and moving from there to doing some basic analytics and modeling. What we did, and this is also for a project that we worked on to assign gift portfolios at a higher education institution. There are 700,000 total constituents in that database. And from there, we isolated 25,000 that were not only high capacity, but also showed signs of engagement and activity. So there was some communication with them. They weren't complete strangers. From there, we narrowed that pool down to 7,000, representing the top 2.5% of individuals who scored the highest on our model and had a gift capacity of at least 100,000. From there, scanning it down even or shrinking it down a little bit more and looking at those individuals who are under 85. So we wanted to separate out those folks over 85 and under 85 to steward them a little bit differently in the way of gift opportunities. And then lastly, from there, really segmenting out the top 500 major gift prospects that this university's advancement team was going to focus on across the department. And what we provided also was kind of a second tier and a third tier behind that. So again, if you cross people off the list, there's other individuals to inform that list with. Now, your organizations probably don't have 700,000 records, but the truth is to do any kind of modeling, you really need about 15,000 records to get something great out of there. Although some of the basic models that I mentioned to all of you can be done with a lot less. The truth is, only you know how manageable that prospect universe in your database is. And for some folks, just with a database of 700,000, you may not know where that manageable universe is because looking at a wealth screening just simply is not enough. On the next slide here, we're just coming up to an end, is this idea of RFM analysis. So a wealth screen is something that's pretty affordable for most of your organizations to do, working with Wealth Engine or iWave, and I know there's several other providers out there. I know we use them as well. And something that their reports give back to you is an RFM score. So this will be included in the data that you receive from your wealth screen. Don't overlook the RFM score. It's actually a number if you have wealth files with you right now that you should go take a look at. And what we do in our models is overlay some of that RFM data. So recency, start with the R, how recently did they make their last gift, their frequency, and then how much they're giving. And so when you overlay those three scores on top of a model, it gives you an even better understanding of not only which donors are likely to give, but how much they'll give and the timing that they'll make that gift in. So please don't overlook RFM work as you think about more advanced major gift work. And then the last slide here before we stop sharing and kind of have a broader discussion, I'm curious, as soon as we pull the slides down here, who may have heard of the Phil Knight gift to Stanford University. It came about many moons ago at this point, and Phil Knight was just talking with the president of Stanford at the time about what could be possible if there was this big gift that kind of manifested. And that president at the time represented really a fundraiser who's thinking on his feet and fast on his feet, because the two of them in this office dreamed up this idea of creating 2 graduate opportunities each year in perpetuity for students to choose any topic of area that they would like to study. Of course, part of the scholarship application would be, writing about what it is that you want to study. And Stanford would make it possible for you to pursue an in-depth immersion of that work for, the duration of a graduate degree, all expenses paid. And it became the first opportunity of its kind around the country. And I think the jury's still out on kind of what value it will add. But Phil Knight was looking for someone who are students that would be the innovators of tomorrow, those people who were willing to think outside of the box and really imagine something great. And so I'm curious if you have examples like this of donors that came to you either with an unprecedented idea or opportunity, or a way that you've manifested a major gift kind of through an unconventional route that you would like to share and kind of discuss. So Andrew, we can pull the slides down, and anyone who feels comfortable turning your camera on, please do.
I actually have a quick question. So when you are designing your model, particularly when you've got your 4 quadrants, and I noticed that there's scoring involved in that, that's not an arbitrary scoring, but is that something that you came up with, or is that something that's part of the model, or is that adjustable, or all 3?
It's part of the model. So Dominic, what you would typically find through a wealth screen is you can pretty much map all of your people in one of 4 quadrants through a wealth screen. But you're really going to need that predictive modeling to then figure out that deeper data, and that heat map that you kind of saw in the quadrants. That's all informed by the actual model. Our models are built in Excel, so and they're just built because we have a senior data scientist on our team. But I do know nonprofits, especially here in Southern California, that are connected to a data scientist through their mission work or through their program work. And just by partnering with them, it requires your advancement team to really know what's in the database. So you as an advancement leader need to know your data first. But then I think someone who is, again, a data scientist, even a recent grad, can build you some of those basic models if we know what to look for as development professionals.
Yeah, I think that predictive modeling has been probably our biggest shortfall. We've been able to get to the point where we can identify and place them in the quadrants, but then being able to take that next step is always that it's a hurdle. And it's also hard to sell when we're talking about trying to get funding to back it, to go to someone to help us to do this. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Of course. And it brings to mind, another tool that we built. I know we have someone on the line from the CSU, and last summer, we work with Humboldt, but we also work with Bakersfield. And we were able to work with the entire CSU system to get fundraising data over a 5 to 10 year period. And we built a model that essentially predicts how much frontline staff is going to be needed to actualize the goal of that department. And it was an incredible exercise. We jumped on the line with all of the advancement senior leadership from all of the CSUs, built everyone a model that wanted one. But it's tools like that that help you then advocate to your leadership about the need to invest in those resources to do major gifts work more deeply. So don't underestimate models at all. They're incredibly helpful.
Well, Aashika, I just wanted to say thanks. It was really nice to hear the presentation, and your examples were really nice. I always enjoy spending time just reflecting on what's important in best practices. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Melissa. And I agree. It's a good way to kind of wrap up our session. The advanced work of major gifts is often about doing the fundamentals extremely well. And it seems pedantic to approach it that way, but it's the truth. If you can do some of those turnkey things in a way that you don't have to think about them anymore, you can free up your headspace to focus on those bigger strategies. So sustainability is always the key. I think that's one of the advantages of partnering with someone to take a look at your development shop with through an assessment or something like that, having someone from the outside take a look in. It helps you think about how you might be able to do some development operations more streamlined, more sustainably and strategically to free up those strategic resources for major gifts.
Aashika, very warm appreciation from the chapter for a most excellent presentation.